At just 23 years old, he just got a $105 million contract. But here's the shocking part. This isn't just a young pitcher getting paid. The Cincinnati Reds may have just bet their future on one arm.
At just 23 years old, Chase Burns has already convinced the Cincinnati Reds to bet $105 million on his future. But here's the shocking part. This isn't just about money. The Reds may have just told the entire MLB, Chase Burns is the next superstar pitcher. At just 23 years old, Chase Burns has already made the Cincinnati Reds do something almost unbelievable. They just gave him a 7-year, $105 million contract. And no, this is not some aging superstar getting paid for what he did 10 years ago. This is a 23-year-old pitcher. A pitcher who is only beginning to show the baseball world what he might become. And the shocking part is this: the Reds may have just made the biggest bet of their entire future. Because when a team gives a young pitcher $105 million, they are not paying for one good season. They are betting on a superstar. They are betting on a future ace. And they are betting that Chase Burns is about to become one of the most dangerous pitchers in Major League Baseball. But how did this happen so quickly? Let's go back to the beginning. Chase Burns was already considered one of the most exciting pitching prospects in baseball. The Cincinnati Reds selected him with the second overall pick in the 2024 MLB draft. That alone tells you something. When a team selects a pitcher that high, expectations are already massive. But the real pressure begins after the draft. Because once you enter professional baseball, nobody cares what your draft position was. The hitters are stronger. The stadiums are bigger. The pressure is different. And every single start becomes a test. Chase Burns didn't just survive that test. He started turning heads. And in 2026, something completely changed. Suddenly, Burns was not just a young pitcher with potential. He was dominating major league hitters. The numbers became impossible to ignore. 11 wins, only 1 loss, a 2.54 ERA, and 118 strikeouts. But numbers alone do not explain the Chase Burns story. Because the most dangerous thing about Burns is the feeling he creates when he steps on the mound. There is a different kind of pressure when he pitches. Hitters know the fastball is coming. They know the breaking pitches are coming. They know they are facing one of the hardest challenges in baseball. And still, they struggle to stop him. That is exactly what the Reds noticed. And this is where the story becomes shocking. Cincinnati could have waited. They could have told themselves, let's see what happens next season. They could have waited until Burns became even more expensive. But instead, the Reds made a massive decision. 7 years, $105 million. A deal that keeps Chase Burns in Cincinnati through the 2033 season. Think about that. The Reds are not simply saying, we like this pitcher. They're saying, we believe this man is part of our future. And the deal itself made history. According to reports, it is the biggest contract ever for a pitcher with fewer than 4 years of MLB service. That means the Reds are not following the market. They are pushing the market forward. But why Chase Burns? Why would Cincinnati take this kind of risk on a 23-year-old? The answer is simple. Because elite pitching is one of the most valuable things in baseball. Every team wants a true ace. Every team wants the pitcher who can walk onto the mound in a huge game and completely change the atmosphere. And right now, the Reds believe Chase Burns can become that guy. But here is the dangerous part. A $105 million contract can change everything. Before the deal, Burns was the young pitcher trying to prove himself. Now, every start will be judged differently. Every bad inning will be analyzed. Every injury scare will become news. Every time he gives up a home run, fans will remember the $105 million. This is the pressure of becoming a star. And Chase Burns is only 23. That is what makes this story so fascinating. He is not a veteran who has already seen everything. He is still learning. He is still developing. And somehow, he is already carrying the expectations of a franchise. But maybe that is exactly why Cincinnati moved now. Because if Burns continues to improve, his value could become impossible to afford later. Imagine this. A 23-year-old pitcher already dominating MLB hitters. Now give him more experience, more strength, more confidence, more knowledge of the league. What happens next? That is the question every Reds fan is asking. And honestly, it is the question every MLB fan should be asking. Because Chase Burns may be entering the most dangerous stage of his career. The stage where a young pitcher stops being a prospect and starts becoming a superstar. There is also something bigger happening in Cincinnati. The Reds are building around young talent. And Chase Burns is now one of the biggest pieces of that future. This is not just a contract. It is a message. The Reds are telling baseball that they are not waiting forever. They believe their window is coming. And Chase Burns is part of the plan. But now comes the biggest challenge. Can he handle the pressure? Can he stay healthy? Can he continue dominating after the entire league begins studying him? Because baseball has a way of changing quickly. One season, you are the young pitcher nobody knows. The next season, every hitter is watching your every move. And right now, Chase Burns is entering that exact moment. The MLB has seen this story before. A young player explodes onto the scene. The fans become excited. The money arrives. And suddenly, the expectations become enormous. Some players disappear under that pressure. Others become legends. So the real question is not whether Chase Burns is talented. The Reds have already answered that question. The real question is, how far can Chase Burns go? Because $105 million is a massive number. But for Cincinnati, it may not be the price of Chase Burns. It may be the price of getting him before the entire baseball world realizes what he is becoming. A 23-year-old pitcher, a $105 million contract, and a future that could completely change the Cincinnati Reds. Chase Burns is no longer just a young arm. He is now one of the biggest bets in Major League Baseball. And if he keeps pitching like this, the most shocking part of this story may not be that the Reds gave him $105 million. The shocking part may be that one day $105 million could look cheap. What do you think? Did the Cincinnati Reds baseball subscribe to Diamond Shock? Because the next baseball story could be even crazier. Make the right decision with Chase Burns? Or did they just take a massive risk on a pitcher who is still too young? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more shocking baseball stories, MLB drama, and the biggest moments but there is one thing many people are forgetting about Chase Burns. A contract does not create an ace. It only creates expectations. And now, every single time Burns takes the mound, the entire baseball world will be watching a little more closely. Before the $105 million deal, a bad game was just a bad game. Now, a bad game becomes a headline. A bad month becomes a debate. And one bad season could make people question the biggest decision Cincinnati has made in years. That is the reality of professional baseball. The moment the money becomes massive, the pressure becomes massive too. But maybe Chase Burns is exactly the kind of player who can handle that pressure. Because if you look at his rise, this is not a story about a player who suddenly became famous overnight. He has been building toward this moment for years. The talent was always there. The arm was always there. The question was never, can Chase Burns throw a baseball? The question was, can he become the pitcher everybody believes he can be? And now, Cincinnati has given him the biggest possible answer. They believe in him. They believe enough to put $105 million behind that belief. But here is where the story gets even more interesting. Baseball is changing. Teams are no longer only looking for veteran stars. They're searching for young players who can become the face of a franchise. And Chase Burns may be exactly that kind of player. He is young. He is already producing. And most importantly, he still has room to improve. Think about how scary that is for the rest of the National League. Right now, hitters are already struggling against him. But what happens if Burns develops an even better breaking ball? What happens if he becomes more efficient? What happens if he learns how to control games even better? Because young pitchers can be dangerous. But a young pitcher with elite talent and experience, that can become something completely different. That can become a nightmare for every team on the schedule. And this is exactly why the Reds did not want to wait. Cincinnati understood one simple thing. If Chase Burns becomes the pitcher many people expect him to become, his price is only going to go up. Way up. And suddenly, $105 million may not look like a crazy contract. It may look like a bargain. That is the gamble. And Honestly, this is the kind of gamble baseball fans love. Because there is no guarantee. Nobody knows exactly what Chase Burns will become. Maybe he becomes a dominant ace. Maybe he becomes the leader of the Reds pitching staff for the next decade. Maybe he becomes one of the biggest names in baseball. Or maybe the pressure becomes too much. That is what makes baseball so unpredictable. And that is what makes this story so fascinating. One decision, one contract, one young pitcher, and suddenly, the future of an entire franchise feels connected to one arm. The Reds are not simply paying Chase Burns to pitch. They are asking him to become a symbol of their future. They are asking him to be the guy fans trust when the biggest games arrive. They are asking him to be the pitcher who stops losing streaks, the pitcher who protects leads, the pitcher who walks onto the mound and makes an entire stadium believe. And that is a massive responsibility for any player. But for a 23-year-old, it is almost unbelievable. This is why some people are already comparing the situation to the biggest young star bets in baseball. Not because Chase Burns has already become a legend. He hasn't. Not yet. But because the Reds clearly believe they have found something special. And sometimes, the biggest baseball stories begin before the player becomes a superstar. They begin when one team sees something that everyone else has not fully understood yet. Cincinnati may believe they saw that in Chase Burns. Maybe they saw the future. Maybe they saw the next great ace. And maybe they just paid for him before the rest of MLB caught up. But there is another question nobody can ignore. Can the Reds build a winning team around him? Because a great pitcher alone cannot change everything. Chase Burns can dominate the mound. He can strike out 10 hitters. He can throw 7 incredible innings. But baseball is still a team sport. The Reds need offense. They need defense. They need depth. And they need to make sure that Burns is not carrying the entire future of the franchise on his shoulders. Because a $105 million contract is exciting. But a championship is what fans really want. And that may be the biggest challenge for Cincinnati. They now have one of the most exciting young pitchers in baseball. But can they turn that talent into October baseball? Can Chase Burns become the pitcher who changes the Reds' future? That is the real story. Not the money. Not the headline. The future. Because right now, Chase Burns is standing at the beginning of something enormous. The baseball world is watching. The Reds are betting on him. And every single start from this point forward will tell us a little more about the decision Cincinnati just made. One thing is already clear. Chase Burns is no longer an unknown young pitcher. He is now a $105 million star. And whether you love the contract or hate it, you cannot ignore him anymore. Every pitch matters. Every strikeout matters. Every bad inning matters. Because the entire baseball world is now waiting to find out one thing. Did the Cincinnati Reds just secure their future? Or did they just make one of the biggest risks in modern baseball? Only time will tell. But if Chase Burns continues to pitch the way he has been pitching, we may look back at this moment years from now and say, wait, they only paid $105 million. And that could be the most shocking part of the entire story. So now I want to know what you think. Would you give a 23-year-old pitcher a $105 million contract? Do you believe Chase Burns can become a true MLB ace? Or do you think the Reds are taking too much risk? Tell me your opinion in the comments. And if you want more shocking baseball stories, MLB stars, unbelievable contracts, and the moments changing baseball forever, make sure you subscribe to Diamond Shock. Because in baseball, the next superstar could be one pitch away. And the next shocking story could start tomorrow.